Now, the Buckeye Extra podcast with Rob Oller, Bill Rabinowitz, and Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Dispatch.
Welcome back to the Buckeye Extra football podcast. I'm Joey Kaufman, joined as always by Bill Rabinowitz and Rob Oller. This is our breakdown of Ohio State's 28-14 win over Texas in the college football playoff semifinals to reach the national championship game. It was a thrilling finish, certainly no shortage of drama in the fourth quarter. We're back now in Columbus from one snowy locale to another. How's everybody doing now that we've made it back to the north?
Well, we caught up on our sleep, hopefully. I know we all basically had a late night, obviously, and then an early morning flight. And anyway, got some rest yesterday, back at it. We've already written stories. Joey wrote about why Denzel Burke didn't play in the second half of the game. Ryan Day said it was, you know what? We're going to have people wait and read them on dispatch.com. And I asked Ryan Day about the penalties that, if they didn't have those penalties in that game, it wouldn't have come down to Jack Sawyer's run through the heart of the South. As I've kind of described this, right? I mean, you had the Zeke run through the run through the heart of Texas, not South. Zeke had the run through the heart of the South, the 85-yard run that more or less clinched the game, and Jack Sawyer did the same to Texas. Obviously a thrilling game. Ohio State's offense sputtered a lot. I didn't expect that. I knew Texas was pretty good defensively, but the combination of Texas's defense and Ohio State's penalties just killed their drives, and it came down to a classic finish.
Yeah, it could have gone either way, honestly. I mean, right there. In fact, if that play doesn't happen, let's say they score on fourth down to tie it, I think Texas probably goes on to win the game. They had the momentum at least. Who knows? I mean, Ohio State would have still had a couple minutes left, but it's why it was such a big play by Sawyer, because it clinched it. And one thing I forgot to put in, just a quick thing on this. I don't know if you guys saw one of my favorite still shots, because it was off of a video, is from the back of the end zone, and you see Caleb Downs. Yeah. It's standing in the end zone, and way in the distance you see the Sawyer touchdown happening, and then Downs goes down to his knees. He said he was exhausted, but his thought process, this is such a football player. This is why this guy is so good. Everybody else is thinking, go, 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 celebrating. Caleb Downs is thinking he needs to tuck that ball because the guy chasing him is good at stripping it.
He knew that.
He knew that.
He knew the offensive player was good at stripping it.
He knew the offensive player was good at stripping the ball. And so he was very thankful and this is sort of an underappreciated little play here, when Sonny Styles jumps in front. They're all racing down there, and Sonny Styles jumps in front of the only guy that could catch and probably would have caught Sawyer, and just kind of, gets in his way, and Sawyer just, jogs, walks, whatever you want to call it, into the end zone. So that just shows you the Caleb Downs, the mindset, the football mind. And I'm telling you guys, again, I went back and watched the 7-yard loss on the second down play. Caleb Downs, oh my gosh, the way he reads that and his just burst to trip up. Now, Ransom, finished it, but Downs actually made that play, and it's just phenomenal.
That to me, I think, was just such a fascinating sequence, the whole thing. And I guess we'll start this by breaking down the fourth quarter, because it was such a fun back and forth. Fourth quarter, you have Ohio State go on this big play, 13-play, 88-yard drive to go ahead. Texas responds by nearly getting in the end zone. They got the ball to the 1-yard line, and Ohio State had a very goal line stand that was really reminiscent of what they did against Penn State, where they were able to hold them and preserve the win. That second down call, I think, will live on. It's this pitch out where Texas, instead of going up the middle, pitches it out to the running back in space, and just a brilliant play by Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom to get the stop, which changes the course of that drive. Because if it's third and goal from the 1 or the 2, I think Texas maybe tries to run it up the middle again. Instead, it puts them in a passing situation, incomplete, third down, and then Jack Sawyer takes off for a play that will live for the ages.
I asked.
I
happened to write off.
I was just going to say of that play, at first I thought that was the dumbest play call ever. Listen to the so-called experts and people who, design plays. I don't think the play itself was terrible. I would have thrown the ball. I think I'm in those situations. I'm throwing it 3 times. But
you're throwing it 3 times
after the first down. After the first down stop, I mean, you've shown you're not going to get in there, at least. But again, Joey said it. Just Downs made a great play.
I talked with Ryan Davis walking off the field, and I asked him. I said, I said, surprised they ran that play. And he said, well, we ran a bare front, so we knew they were going to do that because they would have been really hard for them to run up the middle. So that's one reason they did it. Let's not forget about the first down and the third down play. The first down play, they stuffed the run. I mean, it's a 1 yard. They're at the 1 yard line after consecutive pass interference calls. And the second pass interference call, by the way, I don't think was a great one. I'm not sure that was the right call, but it was still at the 2 yard line.
Yeah, but they got a break on the third down one, which could have been called.
Yeah, well, that's the other. Well, Jack Sawyer, he pressured Ewers on the third down pass. So it wasn't just that he made the fourth down play; he also made helped make the third down play. Yeah, that was a little bit one. I'd have to look at that one again. I haven't done that yet, but from the press box where we were, and it was our end zone. We both thought we were looking for the flag, right? we were looking for the flag.
I thought that was a fair decision by the ref to not call a penalty, but because it was Davis and Igbinosa involved in the play, my expectation almost was based on reputation. A ref's going to throw that, and they didn't.
Well, I think it was a good non-call, but I don't think you'd have had a huge argument if they had called it. I think it was more just a non-call. He definitely had his arm. I would not have flagged it because it wasn't flagrant, But hey, you need some luck. You need some breaks. They do need to work on the handsiness a little bit. Put the oven mitts back on the dude.
I do think the first down stop was really important because it spooked Texas, I think, maybe from trying to just run it up the gut again. And even though Ohio State ran a bare front, Texas doesn't have to pitch it outside. They don't have to throw it. You could run a stacked goal line and try to run on a bare front. I mean, it wasn't as if they were predestined to run outside. But I think Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom deserve credit for making that play as well because they read it so well and they get outside. That should not go without saying as well.
And also that it was a 7 yard gain or a loss instead of like a 3 yard loss. That changes things. The big difference throwing from the 8 yard line and throwing from the 4 yard line. So that was huge. The other thing is I wonder if Texas fans, I'm sure they are. Well, if it's the ball's at the 1, why not bring Arch Manning in? He's kind of the runner. He's bigger and
he got on that fourth down play earlier.
And the other thing is he almost fumbled on that play. It was very close to being, maybe they were a little spooked by that. Let's give ourselves more options.
There was only one quarterback who actually fumbled in the game, though.
Right.
It wasn't Arch.
Yeah, but he had one play and he almost did.
Here's another thing. I give credit to Chris Fowler. I watched he did a little tweet last night. Kind of an overview of the game. I didn't realize this. Maybe you guys wrote it. Sorry if I missed it. But Texas, which some teams do this, and it's a little bit of a head scratcher. Texas brought in defensive linemen on the first down play
as blockers.
Instead of their normal guys. And the point being that they're just not defensive guys aren't used to blocking. They just don't. It's just not natural to them to block. So it just Fowler was saying it doesn't work most of the time, but they still keep trying it. They bring in these big guys and just try to move the thing.
Right.
But big guys aren't used to getting low, and getting that leverage. And there you go.
There may be something to that, but I also they practice it, right? Then it was throw them, hey, big guy, go in the game. I'm sure they practice it. Ohio State's done it too. Caden Curry, I think it's Caden Curry, right? Hasn't he gone in and as a blocker on offense occasionally? I'm trying to think if that's the right guy.
It is unusual. Typically you see what Ohio State's done in those situations. They've used sort of a sixth offensive lineman.
Right.
Patrick Gerd was in, right? Patrick Gerd was in on the.
And I remember Luke Montgomery last year was often used as that sixth offensive line in those heavy personnel packages. But Yeah, I mean that's certainly a situation that could be revisited. Because I think the thing that was so, Rob, we talked about this after the game about the Jack Sawyer fumble return for a score and all that. If Texas scores, it doesn't cost Ohio State the game. It's still a high game. But the way Ohio State had moved the ball in the second half of the game didn't leave you with a ton of confidence that they were necessarily going to go down there and score in 2 minutes. They only had one scoring drive in the second half, and they had a hard time moving against Texas, which did a great job on Jeremiah Smith and really limited their playmakers. So I think that was in the back of my mind throughout that whole sequence. Is I wasn't really convinced they could score in a 2-minute drill, and if you just get in a field goal range, you want to put the game in the leg of Jaden Fielding. So Texas's defense made Ohio State work the whole night, and Ohio State had a chance early on in the game to build a bigger lead and make sure it didn't go down in the fourth quarter. And penalties cost them because it very easily at several points in the first half could have been Ohio State ahead by 2 scores. They never got a 2-score lead until the scoop and score from Jack Sawyer.
I'm curious what the rushing totals were. I don't have my sheet here. I should with me. What are Ohio State? Did they even rush for 100 yards?
I'll tell you.
I would doubt it.
Ohio State ran for 81 yards.
Okay.
Wow.
They average sack adjusted. Do they have sack adjusted? Well, 4.5. So they didn't run it very much. They ran it 24 times for 81 yards.
Sack adjusted 4.5 yards per carry.
I mean, Henderson had the 22-yarder, and Howard had the 18-yarder, which should have been a touchdown. Should have been a 34-yarder, but he tripped over himself. But Quinshon Judkins had 9 for 36. Travion 6 for 42. Again, the story of the offense, as much as Texas, was the penalties. And the Travion Henderson punch, or whatever you want to call it, I think that might have been the biggest play of the game because it just changed the trajectory of it. I mean, Ohio State was rolling. It stopped Texas on fourth down on Texas' first drive. Ohio State goes down the field, scores. They stop Texas, I think, at 3 and out. They get the ball. They're at the Texas 37, 38, and they're rolling. And if they score there, I think it's a different game. I think it's just Ohio State cruises. You never know, but that's the way it felt. And that penalty killed that drive, and then holding calls killed the next 2 drives. And then later you had the Austin Sierraveld one, which was not so egregious. He was trying to be aggressive and whatever, but it still killed that drive. And so I think it was as much Ohio State self-inflicted wounds, as Ryan Day called it, as it was Texas. I mean, Texas has good defense, but
yeah, I don't know. I'm mixed on that. It certainly contributed, and I'm never one of the penalty. You're right. It was self-inflicted. The penalties hurt them, but that's part of the game. It's not like that's some separate thing. I mean, it's part of who they are. It's it's just the way it is. I mean, they could have 6, 8 penalties against Notre Dame.
That was the season high penalties. They had never committed as many penalties in a game.
I get it. And they were
undisciplined as they've been at any point this year.
They were undisciplined. Exactly. Well, who's that fault? I don't know.
Their fault. You shouldn't hold and you shouldn't hit guys' legs.
Right.
So the Travion one was just silly. All right.
Yeah,
you don't do anything like that. You're just dumb.
And
but it was dumb.
I think going back to Jeremiah Smith, that was intriguing because, Ryan Day said today, it really wasn't all that different than what other teams have done. It's just that Ohio State didn't execute. And I'm like, well, part of the reason you didn't execute is because they had really talented guys back there doing it. And I'm not sure I have seen a lot of teams do what, number 16, I don't even know his name, but Jeremiah Smith, Joey had this. Jeremiah Smith said after the game, 16 came up to me after the game and said, my only job was to not let you get behind me. Like, just don't get beat deep. I'm not sure how many, maybe other guys had those orders during the season, but, I think they did play him a little differently, and it was effective. And I don't want to hear about his back either. He said afterward his back was fine. So his back wasn't the reason he only got 3 targets. They only got 3 targets because Texas played great defense on him.
Texas was very committed to taking him away, and I found Ryan Day deviated into some code speak on his Sunday Zoom about the way Texas covered him because Jeremiah Smith thought that was the most double teams he had seen all year. Will Howard suggested as much as well. Texas did a lot of bracket coverage. They did a lot of cloud coverage. The way Will Howard explained it was they were often in some cover four situations where they had two safeties up top, and one safety was always drifting toward Jeremiah's side, was always playing on deep. On that first deep ball, they dialed up to him in the first quarter where he does take a hard landing on his back. They have a safety who was just backpedaling the entire way. Jeremiah Smith never ever gets past him. So they were very committed to making sure they were not giving up the 40-yard plays to Jeremiah Smith. Maybe Ohio State could have tried to do some creative stuff, maybe some bubble screens, maybe some crossing patterns where you get him in space, but it did allow Carnell Tate to make some plays. You think about Ohio State's touchdown drive in the fourth quarter where it's third down, they go to Carnell Tate to move the sticks. That was a case where a safety, number 16 for Texas, really drifts toward Jeremiah Smith's side. Well, it leaves the three guys on the left all in single coverage, and Carnell Tate was open and makes that play. But it does feel like in hindsight, Texas played great coverage on him, was committed to making sure Jeremiah Smith did not go over 100 receiving yards. But there probably had to be a way where he could get more than 3 targets. But you are playing a secondary which has a Thorpe Award winner that has NFL draft picks. That was number 1 in the country in terms of yards per pass attempt, and they showed it. They were committed to not giving up big plays. And
they also got some pressure on Howard.
They did.
Which was key. I mean, I think if he's able to just stand back there, Jeremiah Smith gets more looks and gets more catches. But the way they defended Smith, plus with the pressure on Howard, it kind of took Smith out of the game. And I tell it was brilliant. It was brilliant coverage. It was a good defensive scheme, and Ohio State did what it needed to do. You knew that Tate was going to have a game, and Emeka was going to have a game, and that they had 7 and 5 catches.
Yeah,
they did well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll do much more Notre Dame down the road this next week, but Notre Dame prides itself on playing man coverage, and so how much will they change and adapt? We'll see. I asked Marcus Freeman that on his Zoom, and he said, "We'll do what we have to do." But look, this is a press man team. I don't think that you want to change everything you do for the national championship game, but they're going to have to do something because that's not their style to play the way Texas did. And so,
don't you think that Joey? I'm this for you. Day's coach speak. Do you think he downplayed the way they were defended? Because just like he didn't want to give any ammunition to Notre Dame, like, hey, we watch that tape and we're going to switch things up and do it the same way. I don't know if, Day, if that was a conscious thing, but he didn't want to give too much credit to Texas on their defensive strategy because, hey, maybe Notre Dame copies it if he kind of admits that that's the way to do it.
I just think it's probably an odd one where you have a $10 million head coach and a $2 million offensive play caller, and you were to just gripe about Texas coverage. And, they played cloud coverage on Jeremiah Smith, and we just couldn't get him the ball. I mean, it just sort of, I think maybe it's that. And when they talk about execution, I think part of that is on them too. I think they're a little more maybe guarded in that situation. We're talking about the guys who stepped up, like Carnell Tate. I do think one play, similarly to the Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom stop on second down, sort of an unsung play from the game, was on Ohio State's touchdown drive before they get into 4th and 2, before Will Howard runs for the first down. It's 3rd and 9. They pass to G. Scott, and he gets hit for the first time, maybe about 4 yards or so short of the down marker, and he gets an extra yard or 2, which puts them in a 4th and 2 instead of a 4th and 4, which is a lot more favorable situation and maybe gives you more confidence about running the ball out of that situation. I thought that was a really important play in the game, and that allows Will Howard to run for the first down, and ultimately they punch it in.
Yeah, we said that at the game, and that was a hell of a play. It may have been more than 4 yards. He got hit near the line of scrimmage. It was a short little swing pass. I can't remember the exact play, but he kind of he kind of dove forward to get a few extra yards. And there's a big difference between 4th and 2 and 4th and 4. Do you throw it on 4th and 4? And look, they've been pretty successful in that stuff too. Emeka Buka's a pretty reliable guy in that situation, but the closer to the yard marker you are, the better. And that was a huge play. And then Will Howard, he should have scored. The turf monster got him, but that'd have been That had been a huge play. Joked afterward. Yeah, it was funny. I asked Sawyer in the post-game press conference, I said, what were you thinking as you were running down the sideline? Thinking you might be thinking, well, this is the culmination of my career and what an amazing moment this is, whatever. I didn't know what he was going to say. He said, I was just trying not to trip like this guy. It was pretty funny. And Howard joked that he tripped to save time, just trying to kill the clock.
Could you imagine if that play happened in Columbus, Ohio, at Ohio Stadium? People would have been at Ohio Stadium.
Run on the field.
Sometimes players trip on the playing.
Oh, you're talking about that. I think about the emotion.
Right. Because throughout the whole year, you see on social media sometimes fans griping about the turf or Ohio State getting questions about it. Well, guess what? Sometimes people trip on hill turf. It happens.
Yeah.
No, I mean, can you imagine if that costs them the game? If that happens, and they lose the game because he tripped and just falls. After the Oregon thing, you'd have the slip and the trip. I mean, where he slides down.
Because what if he throws a pick in the red zone after that?
Right.
Fumble.
Right. Or just, or they're going for the win late in the game and that happens. It's just like, oh my gosh.
Well, even the first touchdown, right? What happens in the first touchdown before they score? Arnell Tate drops a ball right in his breadbasket, right? And you're thinking, oh man, they could have to settle for a field goal or whatever happens. But they score. So you kind of forget it. That's the thing. Some plays become magnified and some forgotten just on what happens after it. And the play doesn't change, right? They've either made a great play or a boneheaded play. That doesn't change. It's just what happens afterward. I mean, what happens if, it's fourth down. I'm just thinking if it was third down and Sawyer strip sacks and the ball happens to bounce back to Quinn Ewers instead of Jack Sawyer. It's fourth down. So once he hit him, the game was basically more or less over. Although, look, if he'd recovered and just fallen down or couldn't return it, Ohio State probably still has to get a first down to win the game for sure. Because there was 2.5 minutes to go. So I forget the exact time, but there was enough time. And so it wasn't necessarily over until he scored.
Yeah, I mean, look what they just done on the previous drive. Back-to-back PIs. I mean, anything could happen at that point. So that's why the Sawyer thing was so big. And, I didn't think Will Howard played a great game, but he played a gutsy game when he needed to. I mean, that's kind of who he is. He's a little unflappable. He threw the pick. It was a bad pick. He tripped, but he got the 4th and 2. I mean, that's kind of who this guy is ultimately. I think he's somewhere between what he was the last 2 games and then this game. He was really, really good against Tennessee and Oregon. And again, they gave him a lot of time, 0 sacks. And if you pressure him like anybody, he's not going to be as effective. But, he sort of seems like he's the right man for the job at this point.
Yeah, there's no question about that. There's still some fans that do the whole McCord versus Howard thing, which is, such a silly thing at this point. I think Will Howard is what this particular team needed. They didn't need somebody who could do what McCord did and throw for a gazillion yards at Syracuse. They needed somebody who does what Will Howard does.
The 4th and 2 play I felt was the first time this year where, and if you were going to explain this to somebody who didn't watch this team next year or in future years, where Will Howard made his impact and maybe gave something a little extra. People talked about his dual threat ability all this year. Maybe at times it was over discussed, but in a high leverage moment, that's where his legs were able to make a difference. They had an option to pass if Texas was in a front where they were stacking the box, but it was a lighter box. It gave him an opportunity to run, and he did.
Yeah, didn't Ryan Day say he checked into that play? He called it.
Will
something? He got him. Was it the one? Was it 4th and 2?
No. The screen pass. Okay. We should talk about that too. But go ahead.
I did ask Will about the 4th and 2, and he said he had options at the line where if Texas was not in the right look, and they had put more guys at the line of scrimmage where it was not a friendly situation for him to run the ball, then he could have optioned to a pass or done something else. They weren't locked into that. But he said Texas gave him the perfect front where he could run. Maybe they didn't respect him enough. I don't know. but that was why he ended up running. It was the right situation to run it. And that is like people maybe I don't know if they run that play if Kaufman was your quarterback.
Right. They were 3-0 against him, so maybe they thought, this guy can't hurt us.
Well,
And he did.
I mentioned the screen pass. What a huge play that was, right? I mean, Texas scores with 29 seconds to go to tie it, and it's first down at the 25, and we're saying, well, they got to take a knee, or they got to just run the ball, and they throw the swing pass, and you think, and then you see the wall of blockers, and you say, oh, this is Travion, and boom, it's a 75-yard touchdown. Because everything, again, the momentum, Texas would have gone into the locker room at halftime with all the momentum, 7-7 tie, and instead it was a crusher. And we kind of thought at halftime, okay, Ohio State got the break they needed with that. They're going to go and roll. Well, that's when Howard threw the pick. But still, that touchdown was absolutely huge. It was a gift touchdown. And people say, oh, Texas blitz. They had 3 pass rushers and then a blitzer. So they still have 7 guys in coverage. But that's how fast Travion Henderson is. You give him a crack and he can be gone.
Yeah.
Thanks for that incisive follow-up.
I was curious about Rob's posture there.
He kind of disappeared for a second. What'd you do? What happened?
I dropped something on the floor, a golf tee.
Oh, well, it's important for you to pick that up right now.
You do what you have to do. Anyhow, you want to look ahead a little bit to ND, Joey wants to keep feasting on this Texas.
No, well, this is twofold, both looking at the past game and looking ahead. But I think this game could have been more decisive for Ohio State the way they played in the first and second quarter, and maybe it becomes a more lopsided game in their favor if they don't shoot themselves in the foot with some of the penalties. But nonetheless, for them to have to win a game in the fourth quarter like this and really show some resolve and tighten and win a big playoff game in this manner, I can't think of another moment in Day's tenure where they've won a game in that style, with the exception of maybe some of the Penn State wins.
I got one.
Dame?
Notre Dame last year, the opener. I mean, that was a game where they mucked. It was a defensive struggle all game. That game in South Bend, the opener, was the opener, right? It was the opener of the season, I think.
No, that was
second game. Whatever. It was early in the season.
You're talking about the play where they didn't have enough guys on the field.
Yeah,
and you're giving Ohio State a lot of.
Well,
they ran right to the
point is that Ohio State needed a late touchdown drive to win it, and they came up with it. It was 17-14.
But the stakes of that are different. It's not a winner.
Right.
Well, of course. But there's only one time they haven't been in too many playoff games. So I mean, the Clemson one that they won, they just blew the doors down against Clemson.
Yeah, but the one they lost, again, I wrote this in the column. The one they lost, they allowed Trevor Lawrence to go down the field and beat them.
Right.
The Georgia game, people keep forgetting maybe that Ohio State was ahead late in those games, and then
14 against Clemson.
All the defense had to do was get off the field, and they couldn't. The same thing with who is the Georgia quarterback? Sorry, I've
Bennett. What's his name? Bennett.
Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett.
You just hadn't seen any Ryan Day team win a playoff game in the fourth quarter.
Right.
And it's not always their fault. I mean, they dismantled Clemson in 20, and they had the 2 blowout wins to open this playoff. But I think it's helpful for a team to flex those muscles and have that muscle memory in a tight win or go home situation, and that's how the final will be against Notre Dame. If Notre Dame does muck it up and make it close, they've had some gut check time situations before, which in the first 2 rounds they hadn't. They were playing their backups in the fourth quarter. So this could serve them well against Notre Dame if it does become that type of game.
Well, I think that them doing it against Penn State in November helps them. That was they had to come through in the clutch. They had to have a goal line stand. They had to run the clock out. They did that against Penn State, and obviously Penn State's playoff team. And so, I think it's unrealistic to think that Ohio State or any team is just going to roll through a playoff playing 4 games and just beat the crap out of everyone. It's not going to happen.
I would agree, other than we talked about this last podcast, unless they were 2020 Alabama or 2019 LSU, and they've proved not to be that.
The regular season, they showed they're not that. Well, I mean, 12
right.
Season, they weren't
even
that.
Coming out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were at their best. Their 2 best games without question of the season were Tennessee and Oregon. I mean, that's just, there's no disputing that. So the idea that, and Texas is, I would be curious to see Texas play Oregon. That'd be a fun game to watch. because they're different, very different styles. But Texas is really good. I was more impressed by Texas than I thought I would be, especially their defense.
I was really impressed with their
defense.
defense.
The run game is what it is for Texas. Ewers is kind of who he is. He's capable of making some great throws and then some head scratchers. They drop some balls. I mean, they didn't play a great game. They didn't play a flawless game, but they're good. I mean, that was a legitimate team.
Their defense really limits the big plays. I mean, the old saying is it's like a trip to the dental office for a defense. Although I shouldn't say
What's
that.
your dad do, Joey?
Knowing my father's occupation, that line doesn't land as well for me. But that is sort of the style where they just make you work for everything. They don't allow you the big plays, the explosive, where you can just one play, boom, boom, and it's a big play. So they run a lot of zone coverage, keep stuff in front of them, and then get pressure with their front. So it is not an easy team to play against.
Yeah, Texas was not overmatched by Ohio State.
Right.
They really weren't. And I think Notre Dame might be slightly more overmatched, but I think Notre Dame, talking to people, has that kind of gutsy, they've got some attitude to them too. So I thought it was going to be a cakewalk for Ohio State initially. And now I'm thinking, well, you know what? Especially since we dropped that idea in there of the reverse 2002 game where Ohio State is Miami and Notre Dame is Ohio State in this one, like not given much chance. I think the spread in that game was Miami by 11 in the 0-2. I think it was close to 11 points in that 0-2 championship game.
Does the Notre Dame coach have any ties to the former Ohio State coach who coached Ohio State in 0-2?
Yeah, he actually
Where did Marcus Freeman go to school? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, he was under Tress. I just watched Marcus Freeman on Jim Tressel's podcast, actually, talking about the season. So there's all these little connectors, and I'm not saying I picked, again, we don't want to get too ahead. I picked Ohio State over Notre Dame. I think we had to make that pick like 3 months ago, something like that, it feels like. But I don't think this is I don't see Notre Dame being overmatched. I've been Joey has been big on their defense for a while here. I've been a little bit like, yeah, it's good. I'm not sure it's as good as Texas's, but it might be. Maybe not on the back end. I've been a little suspicious of the offense, but again, so was the 0-2 Ohio State offense. Now, they don't have a Claret, but they do have Love, and he's pretty good.
Well, the issue that they have, and this is why I mentioned the 2020 title game, is that when Ohio State played Alabama, and I don't think Ohio State would have beaten Alabama no matter what, but the fact that they had a bunch of COVID people and also injuries, they gave them zero chance. So I think Notre Dame is in not that dire situation, but Jeremiah Love, their kind of stud running back, is Marcus Freeman said he's good to go. Well, we'll see. I mean, he said after the game he was getting by on guts. So he's got a knee injury. They lost their left tackle. He's not going to play. Another, I think they're going to guards is shaky in terms of injuries. I just don't think Notre Dame matches up well against Ohio State because, again, the man coverage thing, if they choose to do that, they had a terrific All-American cornerback they lost early in the season, Benjamin Morrison, who's a terrific player. So they've already been hit by injuries, and they can't throw the ball. I mean, Riley Leonard Ryan Day said, oh, he's tough and he's this and that, he's a great leader. He didn't say he could throw the ball because they can't throw the ball. I mean, obviously they can make occasional completions, but they're not going to throw for more than 100 or 150 yards. It's hard for me to see a team beating Ohio State unless it's just a muck fest.
It's not hard for me to see a team not throwing the ball to beat Ohio State because I've seen it 6 weeks ago.
True.
There are other factors involved in that one, psychological for one thing.
But the point is, there
were other factors.
You have to throw the ball. You don't have to throw the ball to beat them. That's your point.
I disagree with that. We'll find out.
Michigan threw for 62 yards.
First of all, you're playing, with a quarterback whose health was an issue. How bad he was, we don't know. But you also had weather conditions that were a factor. It was cold. I mean, look, they played a terrible game against Michigan offensively. There's no disputing that. They played a terrible game. And I don't think they're going to have the same game plan. I don't think they're going to run. And Notre Dame is a very good defense. Of course they do. They wouldn't be here if they weren't a good team. I predicted them in our little bracket. I thought they would get to the final against Oregon.
Well, all I know is I remember from 0-2, no one giving Ohio State a chance. So
Yeah, but you're going back almost 25 years for comparison.
well, yeah.
Well, I don't think you have to go that far back. I mean, to me, the way Notre Dame could make, and we can get more into this as we get closer, but they could just make it a rock fight and make it ugly and drag Ohio State into the mud and slow the game down more. And that is the way they're probably going to try to play and make it a slower type of game. But
I think that's the only way they can do it. That's the only way.
I've said from the beginning.
This is very good.
Yeah, I've said from the beginning, protect Will Howard and you'll win. But if they can't, if it's Texas pressure on them or more, in a way, it doesn't matter if it's zone or man-to-man. In fact, if you got real pressure on them and you're playing man-to-man, then you got a whole different situation. So I think if you can protect Will Howard, and I don't know about Notre Dame's D line. What's the resume there?
I haven't studied it close enough to give an educated opinion right now, so I can't. Sorry, I can't
Lou Holtz,
but they're good.
Lou Holtz, that brilliant Lou Holtz. I interviewed him today. And he said, Notre Dame's offensive and defensive line was better than Georgia's. So
but they didn't move the ball against Georgia. They did almost nothing on offense against Georgia.
Who?
Notre Dame.
Right. Well, I know it's because Georgia has a pretty good line. We're getting into the weeds here. I'll just say that I picked Ohio State, but I don't see this as some 2020 Alabama Ohio State situation, COVID or not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ohio State blows them out. I don't see Notre Dame blowing out Ohio State for sure.
That's not going to happen unless Ohio State just completely doesn't show up.
So
it's like an Ohio State Florida game, right?
I do want to bring up one other thing about the Texas game, and certainly we'll have more on Notre Dame in the week or so ahead. But this was actually a discussion point among us and our editors after the game. The Jack Sawyer scoop and score touchdown, where that goes down in history. Is it the most consequential defensive play in Ohio State football history? And you guys have certainly covered more games than I have. Where now that we've had maybe 48 hours here, where exactly do you rank that one at this point?
I feel safe saying it's a top 5, probably a top 3. I can't say it's the most consequential, because it's not to save the game, right? They score, it's tied. So it's not like it'd been different if it was 20-17, with 30 seconds left, and it happens, and a touchdown would have won it for Texas. I would say, this is such a kind of a odd, foolish contest here, but the greatest football play I've ever seen, ever, not just college, but was Maurice Clarett stripping the ball from Sean Taylor in the 0-2 title game, which saved the game, honestly. Now, it wasn't like the last play. It saved the game. It was in the title game. People keep thinking, okay, this thing is an unbelievable play by Jack Sawyer. It's an unbelievable play, but it's not the championship game. So to me, you've got to start there. What was the size of the game? Well, one's a national championship game, and I also throw, this goes way back, but I got some emails from old timers on this. When Ohio State played Michigan in 1975, Ohio State was in trouble, and Ray Griffin picked off the quarterback and took it down, and then they scored and won the game to keep an undefeated season. Of course, then they go to the Rose Bowl and lose to UCLA, get stunned by UCLA to lose the national title. So can you say that Ray Griffin's was the biggest? Not really, but it was against Michigan, and it did keep them undefeated and got them to the Rose Bowl. So that's pretty big too, but I still think you got to look at national title games.
Well, I'll go out on a limb and say this was the greatest defensive play in Ohio State history. The Sean Taylor play happened for a great play by Clarett. Great, amazing play. But it was 14. Look it up right now. 14-7 Ohio State early in the third quarter. Okay? That's when the play happened. And so, yes, huge play, but it wasn't at the end of the game. And so much other stuff happened in that game. The Ray Griffin thing was huge, but again, not national championship. this clinched a semifinal win that propels them into it, and you factor in the other stuff that he's, maybe you shouldn't factor it, but he's a.
You don't factor that as,
but just the whole.
To do with it.
But the play. Okay, fine. Away from that, he made a great play. He beats the guy off the edge. He strip sacks the guy. He picks up the fumble. He runs 83 yards. A defensive lineman. It was like the Sam Hubbard play against Pittsburgh for the Bengals. Different situation, but that was the game. That was the game. You can't. I mean, Sean Taylor, the Claret play was one of about 5 iconic plays in that Miami game. There were a bunch of them.
I mean,
you could make the case that C. Grant pressuring him on 4th down was as big. That was the final play.
Bill, you just said yourself, you're forgetting about the Trevion Henderson swing pass touchdown. That was a huge play. I said
defensive play. We're talking down minus plays. Defensive plays.
All right, defensive plays. Like I said, that's fine. I don't really consider the Claret thing a defensive play.
Well, no, I'm not arguing about that. I'm just saying.
I'm talking about the greatest play ever. I think this is in the top. I think
Joey's premise was defensive plays.
That's fine. I would put it in the top 5 greatest plays ever.
Okay, but I'm just talking. I would stand by it. This was the most consequential defensive play in Ohio State football history.
It is a huge swing in terms of the win probability of the game, because when that 1st and goal starts, it's 66% per ESPN's win probability thing.
For Ohio State,
goes right. So they still had a 60+% win probability after the fumble return for touchdown. It's 99%. So it is a huge swing in terms of Ohio State's expectancy to win the football game, even though it doesn't win the game where maybe they're down or tied and changes it, but it does.
I think it's also important to say modern history, because honestly, I'm not I'm not Jack Park, and I couldn't tell you if do I have it here? 54, 57.
Yeah, that's how I was just trying to sort of look that up.
What were the 54?
Wisconsin game?
Yeah, what about I'm even saying the Wisconsin game wasn't for the title. They played in Rose Bowls for the national championship. Okay, in 54, they won the Rose Bowl 20-7 over USC. Do we know something in that game that might have been a goal line stand? We don't know that. 57, 10-7 over Oregon. I'm almost certain there was a huge defensive play in that game. Those are 2 national championships they won one was a 1-score game, and 54 was a 2-score game. So
you could limit this by almost going the BCS playoff era.
Oh, for sure. Then you're talking, pure defensive play. This was the biggest, for sure. Listen, it was incredible. It's going to be remembered for 100 years. I'm not disputing that, but I'm not even sure why we need to say it is like undisputed the greatest.
I don't think anything's undisputed.
Unless we have other reasons.
But that's what'd you say?
Nothing.
I know you guys were talking about it, and we were talking about it in the press box too. Like that was just that
was my lead to my story, and yeah. So does it again in the heat of the moment? I don't have the Rolodex of Ohio State's greatest defensive plays at my disposal. Okay.
So
if what you write after the game is the first draft of history, we're now on our second draft.
Yeah, right.
We'll have a third draft, but
here's what I would say. Here's what I would say, Bill. I'm just curious if they lose to Notre Dame, if you still say it's the greatest defensive play in Ohio State history.
Well, it's a little bit like what I said before about certain plays that gain importance because of the context. Carnell Tate drops the ball and they don't score. It's a different matter. If the Ohio State doesn't score after Will Howard trips, that play looks different. So yes, the Sawyer play will be even more significant if they beat Notre Dame. If they lose to Notre Dame, then I think it drops down a little bit, but it's still like it's always going to be an iconic play.
Well, do people even give a nickname to 85 yards through the heart of the South if they lose again in the title game?
Right.
I think nobody owns it. They have T-shirts of that run.
Right.
There are no T-shirts if they lose.
That's why context matters. Yes, they have to finish the deal, and that's what Ohio State keeps saying now. This was great. This was an iconic play. This was a great win. It doesn't matter if we don't beat Notre Dame. And that's the whole point of it.
And they finished the deal against Miami Hurricanes. That's my point.
Exactly.
Whether we'll see how this goes down in history. I do think it was a really special moment for Jack Sawyer, because you think about him and the way the Michigan game went, of all players, he has this interception in the fourth quarter, which looks like it's going to change the game, and they end up losing. They don't punch it in and get any points off that turnover. And then he's the guy at the center of the melee trying to prevent Michigan from planting the flag at their midfield logo. So it felt like he should have been remembered in that game for the interception. Instead, he gets remembered for trying to take the flag off midfield. Now he gets a play that I think people will always remember from his time at Ohio State. And it should have been for the Michigan game, but because of the way that happened, it didn't.
Yeah, and especially since he's a local guy. He's a local guy from Pickerington, who's a 5-star guy, and for much of his career was kind of labeled, not a bust, certainly not, but maybe a mild disappointment. Didn't put up the numbers that some people thought he would. And then he blossomed at the end of last year, and then has just gone bonkers this year. He had JT Tuimoloau. Remember, JT came back after spraining his ankle. They've just been incredible. What was the statute? 7 pass breakups for Sawyer, plus the 4 sacks, right? 5 sacks, whatever it is.
4.5 sacks, 7 pass.
It's crazy in 3 games. I mean, he in particular, Sawyer, is playing at a level that, I mean, let's say it. It was a Chase Young Bosa level. That's where he's at right now. Well, that's where he's at.
I think he is, but the guy on the other side of the ball is too. Let's not forget he had what? How many? A sack and a half. First 9 minutes before he gets hurt.
Right.
Who knows
to play?
Who knows what JT finishes with? I mean, JT has more sacks. I think the combo is, just unbelievable, the two guys.
And now they're going to go against the backup tackle for Notre Dame.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. I got the Buckeyes by like 10 or something. I don't know.
67.
That would not shock me. That you would pick that.
No, yeah, like I've certainly picked against Ohio State. I picked against Ohio State against Oregon.
Well, no, not picking against. Yeah, well, we won't name names. There's some others we know who have never and never will pick against the Buckeyes.
I'd be in great shape in that bracket if I were a homer and picked Ohio State.
You are the king of the ifs.
Of course.
If they don't commit penalties, if this.
Well, that's what we do, right? That's what we do.
That's what we do.
But I'm not surprised that Oregon or that Penn State got a phone call. Sorry.
What? Who?
No, I'm not surprised that Notre Dame made the final. I mean, that's not at all. I thought they would beat Georgia. I thought they'd beat Penn State. So I'm not surprised.
There you have it.
There you have it.
Not surprised.
All right. Well, tune in next time, boys and girls.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I don't know why I said that with a tinge of sarcasm. But if you've made it to this part of the podcast, we do appreciate it. And if you have enjoyed the podcast as Ohio State season goes deeper into January, give us a review. Let us. We haven't asked for that in a while. Thanks for if you enjoy us, or if you don't enjoy us, nonetheless, leave a review. Be honest.
How could you not enjoy us?
I hope you enjoy us more than you don't enjoy us. But
the banter, Rob being wrong and me being right. Who would not enjoy that? Thanks, everybody.
You could call it the Correcting Rob segment.
We'll see. We'll see we'll see what side of history I'm on.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.